What would you consider the best Half-Life fan game? Now, a man who is mid would say Half-Life and Trophy Zero because of it being good, while only the most based of men would say Hunt Down the Freeman. But then, there's in my opinion, the best Half-Life fan game to date, Black Mesa. The game is great. It remade Half-Life in the best way it could. It changed the elements that need to be changed and still stayed faithful. But perhaps I should talk about the history of it, though. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. So in 2004, Valve decided, hey, let's remake Half-Life on the Source engine. And Half-Life Source was released and, well, it wasn't very good. A bunch of glitches, barely any changes aside from water, and you could literally skip one of the chapters very easily. So people were disappointed. And a certain group of people decided to make something absolutely new. The name was Black Mesa Source, and about 6 years later, a free version was released to great acclaim. But Valve had barely any problems. All they wanted was for the team now known as Crowbar Collective to remove the source in the name. So now the project is Black Mesa. Eventually, Valve also approved it to be monetizable. So now Black Mesa is commercial as well. And in 2019, they announced a new part of Black Mesa, Zen. And in 2020 it was released, to massive acclaim and great reviews. And that's where we are now with Black Mesa. So let's get into the actual gameplay instead of the real world history, shall we? Black Mesa mostly stuck to the gameplay in Half-Life, but with two major changes that change how you play it. 1. Enemies can now do everything at the same time, meaning you can't do the same things you did in the original Half-Life, as you now have to be on the edge of every fight. And 2. Ammo counts are different. This means you shouldn't rely on certain weapons for the game like you could in the original. For example, I like to use my MP5 and shotgun a lot because of the good amount of ammo you could have in the MP5, and it would take a really good amount of rounds to fully deplete it. But in Black Mesa, the MP5 has less ammo, so I couldn't rely on it as much. Instead of 50 bullets in a clip and 250 max ammo capacity with 10 grenades, you get 30 bullets in the clip, 150 max ammo, and only 3 grenades. The shotgun was very good in the original because it could do high damage at times, with the ammo being 8 shells in the clip with 125 max ammo. Perfect for taking down enemies like Vortigons one at a time. But in Black Mesa, you can only have 63 shell ammo capacity, which lowers the ability to use it more. This isn't just with the shotgun MP5, it's with many weapons. It changes how you fight enemies, since you have to save ammo for bigger and bigger fights as the game goes on. The way Black Mesa changes the gameplay changes it in a large way by simply 2 changes, which is why it is so different. So I forgot to talk about the music in the first Half-Life vid, so I'll talk about that too while we're here. The original Half-Life didn't do much in the music, as most tracks are ambience, but when the music is there, it goes hard! A lot of the music is rock, drum tracks, horror, and when you reach Goddard's lair, they hit you with the friggin'. But in Black Mesa, they take a step forward, giving it more of a horror feel, as I put it. Now, I make music. The actual song you hear at the end of my videos is by me, and some of the tracks I put on my videos are my own tracks as well. And in my opinion, the best tracks in the game are Zen, because of the foreign feeling, but I'll tackle that in the Zen section. However, the rest of the game has really good music, like the service tension tracks, the power-up tracks, and more. The original Half-Life's visuals back in 1998 were really good, but in the modern day, these visuals are not as good as they were back then. The human models mainly look blocky, weird, and outdated. But Black Mesa changes these visuals to make them look more modern and less low-poly, smoothing out the models while adding newer ideas. Except for Zen, but we'll talk about that later. The environments of the original game held up much better, in my opinion, since they were buildings, and buildings are flat, so it takes away some of the age. In chapters like Blast Pit, Service Tension, residue processing, and around the end of On a Rail. These maps look great due to things like color and light, which change up the look from the dull, rusty, underground environments of the normal game. For Black Mesa, however, they take it to the next level, as now the visuals look a lot less low poly, so it makes it look way more interesting. Additionally, it makes the maps of surface tension, On a Rail, and other outside maps look really good, especially in surface tension, as you can see the environment getting worse and worse, given an orange look for a lot of the game. Maps like residue processing now have a more orange look, and it looks way more realistic. Now that I've gone into maps, let's talk about models. The models of characters like scientists now look more like characters in Half-Life 2, the way they look. Humans have better facial movement now, thanks to the Source Engine's facial animation usage. And now Barney doesn't look like he's a 60-year-old man, or Insomniac. Now let's look at the enemies, which I'm putting in a separate section. The enemies in Black Mesa look and sound a lot better than the original enemies mostly. In the original game, the enemies looked good even though they were low poly. Things like the alien grunt, ichthyosaur, and the gargantua looked really interesting in the original game. And in Black Mesa, they take elements of each and make them look better, upping the poly count as usual and making them look more human in ways. The Vortigons take their design from Half-Life 2, and the zombies and headcrabs looking like their Half-Life 2 versions as well. However, they also give a new look to the enemies of Half-Life 1, and change their designs for the better. For example, the alien grunt in the original looked good for what it was, an alien grunt. But in Black Mesa, they make it look more humanoid and give it a bit more of an alien soldier look. Additionally, my second favorite design from this game has to be the nihilanths. Now, the original nihilanth looked pretty weird, and a little creepy with how it looks like a baby with a third arm coming out of it, and how it speaks to the player. Black Mesa understands this and adds more ideas to it to make it look more weird, giving it a more creepy face with sharp teeth instead of the black voids on the original nihilanths. But my favorite thing about the design is the mechanical thing on the bottom of it. This makes me ask questions like, why is it connected to the piece? Is there more to the nihilanth that we know? How did it get this piece on it? Was it simply naturally on it? It simply makes it more questionable. The designs of the enemies in this game are amazing. It improves the original designs of the enemies in Half-Life in so many ways. But now there's only one more thing to talk about, and probably the main set piece of Black Mesa. Zed in the original Half-Life was not very good. The gravity in it was confusing, Gonarg was a little underwhelming, and Interloper was annoying. The team at Black Mesa also knew this, and changed Zen to be the literal best part of the game. The environment of Zen is phenomenal in this game, giving it a foreign feel like it's supposed to be. It feels like you've been teleported straight to your doom. And it is so good that it caused a nuclear explosion on my PC! Okay, jokes aside, Zen also did something I loved. It showed the nihilanth's portal from the start, as you inch closer and closer to it. It might seem small, but it just seems like you're walking closer and closer to the end of it all. After the HECU, aliens, assassins, and more, you finally get close to the end of the incident. You're able to survive everything. Then the music and sound design come into play. The music has a chorus of voices in it, and also is the most intense part of the soundtrack in my opinion. My favorite parts of the soundtrack have to be the Gonarg's lair tracks. They just sound like you stepped foot into a place where you don't belong, a place you shouldn't be in. Other parts of the Zen soundtrack have an intense kick to it as well, like the Gargantua chase music, Shadow of Death. Speaking of that, I'll go into how the levels are changed. The Zen levels were decently short in the original, and when I played it, I was thinking in my head, that's it? That's the entirety of Zen? This was being hyped up to since we've got hostiles, and it's just 40 to 50 minutes of crap? But in Black Mesa, they extended it. They made the levels more satisfying to play. For example, the namesake chapter of the game, Zen, was really short. Simply just do some platforming and then do a puzzle. That's all. Black Mesa's Zen had a lab segment, more puzzles, a longer time, zombies, and more. Then there's the second to last chapter of the game, Interloper. The original was very underwhelming and very annoying with things like the starting segment, the annoying amounts of alien controllers, and the constant Vortigaunts, which shoot you constantly. And just a reminder that Vortigaunts take 1 to 2 shotgun shells to kill. So if you have 2 Vortigaunts decently far away shooting at you, unless you got revolver ammo, you are losing your HEV quick, since you barely get any HEV charges in this chapter. Black Mesa instead makes it longer, gives the Vortigaunts more personality and less of the ones who attack you, an intense Ask Gargantua chase, and more. The only issues I have with Interloper is 1, how long it takes, and 2, plug puzzles. So many plug puzzles. Zen in this game now has a really good feel and intense action in it, instead of the annoying original Zen. So now, all there is to talk about is the nihilanth. Now, I actually was okay with the original nihilanth, and don't kill me for this. I actually kind of like the teleportation idea. It was a cool idea that you could be teleported to places where you could kill enemies for ammunition. But it was still a bit of a cruddy boss fight. The attacker shoots can get a little bit annoying after going through all teleporters. Now guess what I'm gonna say? Nothing, just see for yourself. Okay, so let me explain how this boss fight goes. It starts with the original. You fall and enter the nihilanth chamber. But instead of the teleportation mechanic, the nihilanth instead heals with more designed healing crystals, shoots lasers at you, rises rock walls on the ground, and throws the breeze of Black Mesa at you. Yeah, this boss fight is intense and awesome. Additionally, the way the boss fight gives you ammo is simply through ammo canisters around the arena, which helps the boss's flow. And so the boss dies. It causes a grand explosion, the game is over, your journey is done. Hours and hours of gameplay is over. And so, let's conclude this video. Is Black Mesa worth the $20? Yes, absolutely. The way it updates the original game is magnificent. And it's 15 years of work. So Black Mesa is how a first-person shooter should be made. Thanks for watching.